The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action.
Donald Trump has just been inaugurated as the 45th President of the United States. After one of the most bitter presidential campaigns in modern history, many people hoped that he would give an olive branch to those people who didn't want him to reach the White House. Yet in his inaugural speech, he talked about the carnage that has inflicted America, the rape and pillage of America by foreign countries, and by the elite politicians in Washington who don't think about their own people. Sam, why did Donald Trump decide to take this approach in his inaugural speech, which is so different from John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan and almost everyone who came before him?
It's consistent with the tone he took throughout the campaign, I think. He's painted a consistently dystopian view of America, talking about the loss of industrial capacity and other countries winning over America at the expense of American workers. His inauguration speech was entirely consistent with that.
We must protect our borders from the ravages of other countries, making our products, stealing our companies, and destroying our jobs. Thank you.
I mean, there is a genuine problem there, and he's right to seize on it, and he was very acute to seize on the problem that is afflicting large parts of the country, especially rural parts of the country or the Midwest, where there's been a big loss of industrial capacity. There's been interesting analysis in the past couple of days showing a large number of the counties that flipped from Obama to Trump had seen net declines in business formation during the current decade, during the recovery. So there is genuine economic hardship out there, and he's really isolated that. But the complex picture we have now in the US is you have some parts of the country which are experiencing that, other parts, largely the metropolitan areas, where there's been genuine recovery, and he needs to forge policies which help all parts of the states.
One of the things I find interesting is I remember back in 2009 when Barack Obama was inaugurated. You know, there were a lot of people in the country who didn't vote for Obama, but there was an incredible kind of excitement and electricity in Washington, D.C. Whereas right now, behind us, you've got these protests. There are a lot of people who are trying to send a message to Donald Trump. We're going to have a big march in Washington on Saturday. Huge number of women coming in to express their opposition to the kind of sexist language he employed on the campaign. You know, Americans are talking about, can Donald Trump bring the country together? Can the country come together when you look at what's happening behind us?
I think it's amazing when you also think about the turnout of this inauguration and compare it with some of the images from the Obama inauguration. The mall was clearly much more populated during that inauguration than this one. Just talking to people around the streets today, this is, as you say, a very divided country. There was an anticipation that Trump would adopt the tone that he did on the night of his victory, which was very much about healing the wounds. There wasn't really a lot about that in the inauguration speech. This was much more of the angry, dark tone that we've seen from Trump. So really now, I think if he does want to genuinely bring the country together, it will require him to change his tone and adopt policies which people feel are reaching out to everyone.
And I found it was interesting that during the inauguration, at the speech itself, he made no attempt to reach out to Hillary Clinton, no olive branch, no recognition that she was even in the audience. It's actually a pretty brave thing for her to do, to walk up there having lost the way she did. Now, he talked a little bit about her later on, but you know, the one speech that the whole nation and the whole world saw, it was almost as if she didn't exist.
Well, you say that about Clinton, you can really say that about his tone vis-a-vis Washington in general. The tone was that Washington has failed. With Washington's elite basically sitting right behind him on that dais. So I think, yeah, this was not a conciliatory speech. This is a speech which is saying that the political establishment have failed, once again painting himself as not part of that establishment, and saying he's going to overturn the existing order. And that's one thing we can certainly say. This is a president who is determined to shake things up from day one.
And yet he is the most unpopular he comes into office as the most unpopular US president in modern history. I mean, again, as reflected in these protests over here, he's going to have an uphill battle to try and bring the country around him and try and do some of the things that he wants to do.
He clearly will need to try and pull the country together, but it's also a question about getting things through Washington itself, and that is by no means for certain either. When you think about the divisions that exist within the Republican Party, right now the party is feeling flush with power, given for the first time since 2006 they control the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. Yet there are deep divisions in the Republican Party over the details of policies such as tax reform, protectionism and the merits of that, infrastructure, whether big deficits are indeed to be tolerated, and critically about Russia and America's relationship with Russia, which is a festering sore which will hang over this presidency's opening weeks and perhaps more.
So Sam, on a lighter note, one of the interesting things about covering Donald Trump over the last year and a half now is the different kinds of protesters that I met across the country, the costumes they were wearing, the noises they were making. I mean, it really was an incredible amount of creativity, whether you like Donald Trump or not. What was the best costume you've seen today?
My favorite one was a man who's dressed up with a huge papier-mâché head of Donald Trump carrying the American eagle in a caged papier-mâché eagle, giving I suppose the idea that Trump had almost captured and caged liberty itself.
I got to say, my favorite was there was a man who had a white dove on his arm, on his shoulder, and he had 3 llamas and alpacas with him. And he said that he wanted to make sure that agriculture was going to be free. It was like, make agricultural great again. And when I asked him who the llamas had voted for, he said they were independent. But on that note, here in Washington, I'm Dimitri Sevastopoulos, Financial Times Washington Bureau Chief.
And I'm Sam Fleming, US Economics Editor.
It's going to be only America first.